Hi, I'm Justin Crosby and welcome to another TellyCast. On this week's show, we have two of the UK's best-known TV execs who've teamed up on another TV podcast show, The Insiders. Jimmy Mulville is co-founder and managing director of Hattrick Productions, one of the UK's most successful and influential independent production companies. With a career spanning decades, Jimmy has been behind some of the most iconic British comedy and entertainment shows, including Have I Got News For You, Father Ted, Outnumbered, and Whose Line Is It Anyway, and lots of others. He's also been a vocal advocate for the indie production sector and the importance of creative freedom. And joining him is Peter Fincham, one of the most respected figures in British TV, having served as controller of BBC One and director of television at ITV. During his time at both broadcasters, he commissioned some of the UK's biggest hits, including The One Show, The Apprentice, Downton Abbey, and Broadchurch. Today, he's co-founder of the production company Expectation, where he continues to develop creative programming across genres, delivering big hits such as Clarkson's Farm. Before his exec roles, Peter was managing director of Talkback Productions, where he helped shape groundbreaking comedy shows like The Day Today and I'm Alan Partridge. Welcome to the show, guys. How are you doing?
Hi. Yeah, good. Yeah.
Welcome to TellyCast. And how's it going with your own podcast, by the way? Let's start there.
We're enjoying it, Peter. It was Peter's idea, actually. It's your fault.
Well, you know, the thing is, it is what it says it is. It's called Insiders. We don't actually call it The Insiders because there can be other insiders out there. And really, you know, we talk about television. We talk about stuff that's going on in television. We're not reviewing programs or anything like that. And I suppose when we started, we thought, well, will there be enough to talk about every week? But the truth is, there's always something to talk about. There's always some announcement out there or some development or some person has moved from this job to that job. So, you know, it's quite, from our point of view, all we do is talk. We have a producer called Owen, and he has envelopes and he just gives us subjects and we talk about them. And then when we run out, he gives us another envelope and then he edits it together.
Right.
But we have found that, you know, in the TV industry, there's a lot of people who are listening to it and seem to like it.
Good. Well, you're in the right place to talk about TV and content as a whole. So let's start with the UK TV industry then. A lot of people think it's in a bit of a pickle. Jimmy, what do you think?
Well, I think that it's cyclical, isn't it? I mean, you know, we've been here before. I think that I used to get called up every 2 or 3 years, specifically about comedy, and the journalists would say, you know, comedy's in a terrible state. What do you think? And actually, you know, when you think about it, TV is still pretty dominant as a content deliverer. I mean, YouTube. I mean, I've known on your show here that you talk about all kinds of content, and digital certainly is becoming more and more. YouTube apparently is the most watched channel on screens, so you can watch YouTube on your television screen now. People are watching YouTube a lot, so I think that it's just changing. It's not. I mean, in terms of drama, I think there's been a contraction in drama commissioning, and I think that the big streamers have kind of pulled their horns in a bit. And that bubble, that was a bubble though. The drama bubble was going to burst.
That was a COVID bubble, wasn't it, really?
Well, it was COVID. There was a writer's strike.
Yeah. And
I think the economy took a downturn. I think it's never just one thing, is it? But, you know, shows are still being made. I don't think it's the end of UK. I don't think it's the end of the UK TV business. I think it's changing. And I think there are challenges. And I think that smart people are running UK broadcasters. They'll have to work it out somehow.
Yeah. And what do you think, Peter, having run, you know, 2 big channels and having all that experience on the network side, when you look at the industry now from a producer's perspective, you know, how do you see it? Because there's a lot of people who are really suffering, I think, in the industry right now, especially a lot of freelancers, but production companies, you know, nobody's going to admit the fact that they're suffering, but a lot of people are.
Yeah, I do think it's been on a bit of a downturn. Times are tougher, as you say. Nobody really wants to admit it, but if you're an independent producer, I would say this: one of the requisites qualities for the job is to remain optimistic and to kind of roll with the punches and keep going. You shouldn't have become an independent producer if you thought it was going to be easy. It never is easy, and I don't know. It also depends a bit. Do you see the glass is half empty or half full. There's still a lot of television being made. It changes slightly. One genre rises, another one falls. But I'm very against the idea of the golden age was some time ago. Après-moi le déluge, the end is nigh. We've got a very good friend called Rory. And I remember he said to me once, the thing is, Peter, when things are going really badly, what you need to remember is they might go even worse, and then this will seem like the good old days.
Yeah.
And I kind of feel that a bit about television. There's still a lot of television being commissioned and made. It might be economically a bit more challenged than it was 4 or 5 years ago, but still there's, the BBC channels, ITV, Sky, Channel 4, 5, etc., and all those streamers regularly commissioning things and putting them out. So I don't think you should get, cyclically, we might not be in the best bit of the cycle, but I don't think one should get too gloomy about it.
Well, I suppose, one of the things that always fascinates me is that I think it was a period pre-COVID where you used to see almost every week, you used to read of a commissioner who's left and set up his own indie. That used to be like every week.
Like lemmings, they were like lemmings.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right over the cliff.
Well, you could say that because actually, some of you talk about, what it needs to be a producer, what you need as a skill set. Obviously, you need creativity and you need to be optimistic, but I think you also need to be an entrepreneur as well. You need to have a proper business brain. And a lot of people kind of, in the creative industry, perhaps that's maybe not their forte. And now is probably the time that you really need that skill set.
Yeah, you also need the requisite amount of psychological damage as a child. To want to do it in the first place is the kind of bloody mindedness of. I was listening to a podcast once by a guy called Adam Grant, who's this sounds posh. He's an organizational psychologist, but he says my job is to make work suck less, is to find out how people work, and he lectures at a place called Wharton, and he talks about this thing, that when you're dealing with creative people, he talks about Pixar and how Pixar was created. And the team after Toy Story was brought in to create a new project, and they weren't getting it right. And the producer of that project got everybody into the cinema room and said, look, Steve Jobs and John Lasseter don't believe we're going to do this. And the psychologist said it's a very interesting technique to use with creative people is you activate that part of them, which is very powerful. And when it's dormant, you need to activate it by saying people don't believe in you. So you activate the part that wants to prove people wrong. And I think a lot of people I know in our neck of the woods are driven by that kind of thing of I'll show them. Let me just get off my arse and show them. And I think that spirit of, and like you're talking about, entrepreneurial spirit is often quite risk taking. It's not risk averse. It's risk taking. Yep. And when the BBC set up BBC Studios, my question to James Parnell, the architect of shutting down BBC Three, real genius, I said, who's going to run BBC Studios? And he said, well, we haven't got that far yet. I said, no, you start off with that person. And they don't really have that person at BBC Studios. They've got managers who manage interesting labels, like Peter's in business at BBC Studios.
That's right. Yeah.
So they get people in who are entrepreneurial to do that heavy lifting for them. And that's the difficulty with big corporations, and is they don't seem to have, they can have mavericks, but they don't have entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
But to go back to your question, what's the state of the TV industry and what's the state of the independent production sector are two slightly different questions. After all, the TV industry existed before independence existed at all, and made lots of great programs and to huge audiences. And the independent sector was bizarrely a creation of the Thatcher government in the 80s. When
That's
they
right,
came
Channel
up with
4,
25%, Channel 4, and then the 25% quota to stop, producer broadcasters having a monopolistic sort of position in the market. And it's been a great success. There's been a lot of consolidation in it. A lot of independent companies are owned by a very small number of super indies now, like All 3 Media, Fremantle, ITV Studios, BBC Studios, and so on, Banner J. So there aren't that many independent companies now. We run 2 of them. But I think the state of the industry, you should fundamentally look at it through the eyes of the viewers. Are people seeing good television programs? Are they still seeing innovative, creative television programs? And I don't think things are in that bad a shape. but I fully accept that for indies, it's tougher than it may have been a few years ago. Maybe it's overexpanded. Maybe too many people, as Jimmy was saying, or as you were saying, maybe too many people thought it's a safe thing to do, to leave my salary job working for such and such a big organization. It was never a safe thing to do.
No.
It was always a risky thing to do.
I mean, I don't know how many indies there were at its peak. I mean, but you're probably talking about 1,500 or something like that, an enormous number, right?
Well, there was a period of consolidation where people had set up companies in the 90s, in our case in the 80s, and had sold those companies and made some money. And it must have looked very appealing, thinking, well, I can do that. I can make a couple of shows and sell out for loads of money. But it isn't that easy.
No.
Because actually, what can happen to a company is they can do one show and it can be their it can be the thing that underpins their profitability.
Yeah.
Then the show comes off the air.
Yeah.
We once sold half of Hattrick to an investment bank in 2002, which is a big mistake. Not their fault, just two different cultures. And my first meeting, I had to inform them that three of our shows are coming off the air in the next 12 months. These guys went white and said, is there anything we can do to kind of mitigate this? It's very kind of, oh my God, it's quite...
investment banks don't like creativity.
And I said, well, the only thing I can think of is fitting the seats in the boardroom with the safety belts, because I can't work. This is the kind of business that we're in.
Yeah.
Is that you, as Peter said, you have to roll with the punches.
Yeah.
And I always say to younger people coming to business, if you get a show turned down or you get a show cancelled, spend 20 minutes feeling sorry for yourself and then think of something else to do.
Yeah.
Just get on with the next thing.
Yeah.
Because they'll always need new ideas. Broadcasters will always need new ideas. And your best insurance really is to have a good team with you who are creating good ideas that people want to buy. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to play devil's advocate here a little bit. You two are extremely successful. You've had amazing careers in the industry, and and there's a lot of particularly unscripted businesses, I would say, who are really in that sort of, specialized in that middle band of programming, which has really been sort of gone, right? But particularly over the last 2 years or so.
Yep.
It's pretty difficult for them to reboot their businesses because essentially that business isn't there anymore.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you must know, lots of people between you that's happened to in the last, year.
I mean, I agree with you said about the freelancers. My brother, for example, was a series producer on Pointless and then moved on to another job. And then that series didn't get into the Pointless reordering pattern. Yeah. And he struggled to find work in that genre. And we stood down 3 people who work in the comedy entertainment department. First time I've ever made anybody redundant was last year. 3 fantastic producers that were pitching into an area that didn't exist in the same way as it had existed. So on personal levels, I think it has been very, very tough. Yeah. But when industries change, people do become unemployed, new jobs occur. Of the 3 people that we let go, they're all back in various forms. Yeah. One is producing podcasts. One is working in a digital studio. The other one has moved north to work in a regional company where he's from. Yeah. So they're smart people. They reinvented themselves. Yes. So again, it's about that resilience.
Well, I think that's certainly down to the individual. I think perhaps those businesses, again, that business model doesn't necessarily work anymore when we're talking about sort of a mid-sized unscripted. Or do you disagree?
It may be, the odds may be longer against you making a success of it. Yeah. But somewhere out there will be some incredibly brilliant person who's got an idea that we don't even know what it is around this table, that will sort of sweep the world like, I don't know, Big Brother did 25 years ago.
Who wants to be a millionaire?
Yeah, or millionaire.
Quiz was dead, and then suddenly that comes on, and everybody wants it.
So I could see where you're saying we've had some success and a lot of luck in our careers and so on. So we don't want to sit here sort of saying, oh, well, it's all right for us, but who cares? Who cares about us in a way? What I'm saying is, because I talk to people who are thinking of starting companies and so on. I'm always very reluctant to advise them not to, because they might be the person who has that hit and then does make a huge success of it, and the company becomes, the next Studio Lambert or whatever. That's still entirely possible. Yeah. The odds might be a bit longer. It may be that the genre mix on television has changed. Definitely, that's true. I mean, we talk about it being an age of drama. It's an awful lot of drama companies out there. You might think twice before starting a drama company unless you're very sure what your sort of USP is. But I just think, just to go back to this, what we were saying at the beginning, in order to embark upon the risky thing of leaving a salary job and starting an independent company, you need to have a certain belief in yourself and resilience.
Yeah.
Those two things will get you through if you've got good ideas as well, and you've got whatever that right kind of mindset or personality type is.
Yeah.
It's not going to shut down. It may change, shrink, mutate, but there's still room out there for independent producers.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that change then. Jimmy, you talked about YouTube, and absolutely, it's become possibly one of the biggest talking points within TV over the last 12 months or so. Its success on televisions, in America and around the world is growing, and commissioning is easing off. We're seeing less commissioning across a number of different broadcasters. How do you view the rise of YouTube then, in terms of, does it affect you, in terms of your long established and really successful businesses? I know you've invested in Strongwatch Studios, which is, and it'd be good to understand, your approach on that. But first of all, how does that affect Hattrick, the growth of YouTube, and how do you view it?
Well, we don't make shows specifically for YouTube because YouTube don't pay you any money. So we need people to fund our production activities.
They did commission for a bit, didn't they?
Yeah, then they
stopped.
They realised they didn't have to.
We made one for them.
Because they realised it was they didn't need to, because people were putting their we do have content. We have a Hattrick YouTube channel, which is, of course, it's got reversion stuff from our old catalogue, and that does make us a profit every year, quite a healthy profit. And I think that as the broadcasters kind of tiptoe out of genres like comedy very slowly, most of the big terrestrial broadcasters now do much less comedy than they used to, including the BBC. So I'm thinking there will be opportunities for producers to, maybe with investors or with brands, to set up comedy digital channels. Because if you think of the triangle, there's always people down here who want to watch comedy, always people down here who want to produce comedy. The problem is, who wants to pay for it? Yeah. Well, that seems to be changing. But if you think that Channel 4 every year get numerous companies wanting to sponsor their comedy, only one of them gets them. There are numerous companies who think comedy is quite a sexy thing to be involved with, to speak to our young audience.
And you wouldn't fund yourself. You wouldn't actually, say, okay, we're going to launch our own original comedy channel.
We could do that. It will be taking a bet. And like I said, we're not risk averse. And I think that we're kind of looking at those various options, because clearly what I'm interested in as well, like Peter was saying, is where's the next idea coming from? And very often it comes from a very peculiar source. So, Father Ted came to us. It was basically a documentary. It was a mockumentary, a comedy mockumentary, which my partner at the time, Jeffrey Perkins, is a brilliant producer. And he said to me, read it. He said, this is a series. I'm going to get them in to talk about a series. But it was sent in out of the blue. It came from nowhere. Well, those ideas coming from nowhere now, it's more and more difficult to find them in terms of linear stuff, because the BBC comedians would go to the Edinburgh Festival, the good ones would get picked up by a broadcaster and put on a development deal. It doesn't happen so much anymore. So they're going on, they've all got their own YouTube channels, but many of them want to cross that bridge into a wider audience or into a more linear space. And I think that companies like ours may be able to provide that kind of environment where they can do their stuff with us, with our input, with our access to broadcasters, and that's quite a kind of 1 and 1 equals 3 deal. I think that's going to happen over the next few years. I know that one of our colleagues, John Thoday, for example, runs his own Taskmaster Vimeo fast channel in America and makes a lot of money out of it. He doesn't go via broadcaster; he goes straight to the audience.
And obviously you're finding it works from a distribution perspective for catalogue as well, and that's and you've got you must have enormous catalogue.
300 years old. Yeah.
How much so?
We started in the reign of Henry VIII. With his jester, actually.
He's still telling the same jokes.
So
you've seen our shows.
So when you look at when you look at production companies out there and who are struggling, YouTube's been around for 20 years now. Do you think the TV industry as a whole has been too slow to react to what's been happening in the digital space? I mean, in the same way, a lot of people have been, me included, have talked about last year as being the time when, the year that TV had its print media moment. It's like newspapers, essentially. They saw it coming, but they weren't quick enough to react. And as you said, big corporations, they're not that reactive, right?
Maybe. I remember the year that YouTube swept into our lives. It was about 20 years ago. Yeah. And I think I was at BBC at the time, and everybody thought, oh my God, this is the end of days. Nothing's ever going to be the same again. And one reason they thought that was because the assumption was that why YouTube worked was that people have very short attention spans and just wanted to watch a 30-second clip of a cat slipping on a banana skin or something. Which is funny. Very funny.
Yeah.
Very funny.
Can't knock it.
If you can persuade the cat to do it, cut the cat in on the income. But that was actually, with hindsight, the beginning of the box set era, when it proved to be the exact opposite, that we had longer attention spans than we thought we had. That if we wanted to watch a 6-part series, we'd rather it was an 8-part series or a 10-part series.
Yeah.
So I don't know what I'm saying there, except don't always believe what you think is inevitable around the corner.
Yeah.
And, later than that, the streamers came along. And there were plenty of people saying, this is it. This is the end of the BBC. This is the end of the other PSBs. But it's not the end of them. They're still there, and they're still making some really, really good programs. I don't know, when I was running ITV from 2008 to about 2016, I think, we would typically on a weekday night get 5 or 6 million viewers. Now that you won't, you'll get 2 million viewers. You're lucky to get 2 million viewers. But on the other hand, there was no catch-up to speak of on ITVX, and now there is. So I guess I'm only saying.
But there was a lot more advertising income in those days.
Yeah, but right? that's a problem for ITV. I'm trying to look at it from the point of view of the viewers fundamentally. Is there still stuff up there that you want to watch and that has an impact and is good quality? And I think that there is. It's for the people who work in the industry, like us, but actually people who are doing much more important jobs than us. They've got to make those difficult calculations about how much you invest in the streaming side rather than the linear side. Those are very, very difficult kind of calculations to make. Get them wrong and you could go into kind of decline. Yeah. Get them right and you can emerge triumphant at the other end of it. But what we do isn't fundamentally that. We're in the program making side. Yeah. And so what are we trying to assess? Is there an appetite out there for good, clever ideas, brilliant ideas with great talent? And I would argue, yes, there still is, but I'm not saying it gets easier. Yeah. But I don't think we haven't shut up shop yet.
And I think Peter's answer is, it speaks to the one of the theses of our podcast. Is that we don't.
You said one of the feces of our podcast.
Feces.
And I thought, this is not a phrase you've used before.
It's my diction. It is that we don't try and predict the future, because we've often gone to these conferences like the Edinburgh Festival, where you get people on stage pontificating. I remember once going to a TV festival in the year 2000, and some bloke from Canada with a ponytail said, well, if you work in television, now's the time to get out, because we're going to be at home creating our own content.
Yeah, I remember that.
It's going to be
user. What followed was the best 25 years television's ever had.
And then, of course, CBS in America and ITV here. You're going to be in terrible trouble. Well, CBS, the advent of the digital age, because Netflix suddenly became a place where you didn't just send your videos back. They created a digital space where they started. Well, in the early days of Netflix, it was like going through the DVD section in Poundland. Yeah, there's lots of repeats. Where are they getting the repeats from? From companies like CBS. CBS made billions of dollars in sales to places like Netflix. So TV is very resilient, and it's always reinventing itself, and it's very hard to predict what's going to happen. So that's why we don't bother, because I think that that kind of, well, in 5 years' time, who knows what's going to happen in 5 years' time? That's the truth.
During the time I was at ITV, this is, I'm sure for commercial reasons, ITV would work out how many minutes a day we spend watching audio-visual content, if you want to call it that, TV.
That's a good job.
And how many days we spend reading newspapers. And even then, it was like 12 minutes a day reading newspapers, 5 hours watching telly. Now, it may have changed, because it depends a bit on your definition of telly. But if you that's why I use the phrase audio-visual content on a screen. So it might be on a laptop, might be on an iPad or on your phone. Increasingly, you're on an aeroplane or a train, and you just see people watching high-quality production, full-fat kind of production value stuff on phones. If it works for them, that's absolutely fine. But they're doing that rather than reading newspapers or other kind of forms of media. So in that sense, I do think our appetite for programs is pretty resilient.
Yeah.
Even while the industry goes through painful readjustments to a different model in a different world.
Just thinking about your time at those broadcasters.
Yes.
What did you learn? What was the biggest lesson that you learned that you took into co-founding a production business? And what do you think is the single biggest lesson that's helped you?
That's a really good question. I think it would, if only everybody who was a producer could for a while become a commissioner and vice versa, it would teach them so much in both directions.
I could do with the rest.
Okay. You'd be very good at it, Jim. You'd be very good at it. But because, so to put it in extreme, if you're a producer, you're sitting there thinking, why can't I get this idea of mine commissioned? Why do those idiots who are the commissioners not want to commission it? Almost as soon as you become a commissioner, you think, where are the good ideas? Where are the ones that are going to really, make a difference?
Make me look good, right?
Make me look good, exactly. You don't sit there, as producers think you do, on a pile, let's say, of 12 scripts, all of which are brilliant, saying, which 2 of these shall I choose for my next season? You sit there thinking, how do I fill those slots in the schedule? And it's just weird. It's just like 2 different ends of the telescope. So I guess coming out the other end after a decade as a commissioner, it's the obvious, really. You think, to a degree, you can see it through commissioners' eyes. And I think that, you may be sitting there with what you think is a great idea. It might be non-scripted, might be scripted. But does it meet that commissioner's needs? Is it what they're looking for, what they think they're looking for? Does it fit in their schedule, their demographic or whatever? That's a really useful thing to learn a bit about. So from my point of view, I've basically been an independent producer. Then I've sort of crossed the floor of the house and then crossed it back again.
Yeah,
I'm glad I've done both moves. But the reality is a lot of people won't get the opportunity to do that. There's no question which is the easier move. The easier move is from being a producer to being a commissioner. It's harder to go from being a commissioner back to being a successful producer. There's not so many people have done that, partly because you, as a commissioner, ideas come at you and you choose them. You choose that one, you don't choose that one. But you go back to being a producer, you've got to come up with something and you've got to sell it. The person selling it in a pitch is doing a harder job than the person who might sit there, as it were, with their arms folded.
Yeah.
You know the famous Alan Partridge scene, Monkey Tennis?
Yes.
I'm the only person who watches that scene and feels for Alan Partridge. I think Tony Hares, the head of programs, is a bit of a cunt.
Yeah.
Am I allowed to say that on your podcast?
Of course he can.
Because he does literally sit there going, no. If he was better at his job, he would say, I'm not that sure about that, but what else have you got, as it were? I always used to say to commissioners, if somebody comes in to pitch you an idea and you turn it down, you want them to go away thinking, I will bring you my next idea. Because it might be a brilliant idea. If they go away thinking, I'm never going to darken it, or if they go away having stuck a piece of cheese in your face, you have failed in the meeting.
Yeah.
So honestly, I think everybody should watch that scene when they're talking about pitch, because also some of Alan Partridge's ideas are perfectly good idea.
I'd watch.
Well,
Monty
Youth
Tennis.
Hostling with Chris Eubank got made in the end, didn't it?
Was it youth? I think it was Cooking in Prisons. That's one. But
Inner City Sumo, I think. Was
Inner City Sumo, a regional detective called Swallow, set in Norwich.
Right.
And Tony Hess says no. He says there are a lot of regional detectives. And Alan Partridge says yes, because audiences like them.
Yeah.
And I think, Alan, you've won that exchange. You are right.
Is
And
that
what would be, if it was written by, let's say, Jed Mercurio, who Jimmy works with, a regional detective called Swallow set in Norwich, BBC would bite the hand off for it.
Is
There's
that
nothing wrong with the idea at all.
Is that what gave you the idea for the Chelsea Detective?
Not exactly.
Alan Partridge, created based on an idea by Alan Partridge. I dare you to put that in the credits.
What's the program about at the moment? Yeah, no Lemons thing that people are all saying. They're all saying it's Alan Partridge meets David Brent. You know, Noel's Kiwi Adventure.
Oh
Yeah.
yes, yeah. Well, we could. Well, Noel Edmonds has been the subject of lots of lampooning over the years by lots of people, but
Surely not.
but let's move swiftly on
Okay.
to talk about public service broadcasters, which is something I know you guys talk a lot about on your show. Channel 4 obviously recently announced their new in-house production plans.
Yeah, that was going to be my get into the bin bit.
Was it?
Yeah.
Oh, well, okay.
They can throw that into the bin as far as I'm concerned.
Well, okay. Well, we'll do a pre-bin then.
Okay.
That's the pre-bin. So what do you think? Opportunity or threat to the indie sector? To true indies?
Well, as Peter's been both a commissioner and a producer, I'll let him answer, then I'll steam in.
Then you correct me. So it could be a threat. It's a bit of a surprise because we thought they were going to announce something quite modest. But the way they describe it sounds as if they want to get the crown jewels of the Channel 4 schedule made in-house. And so, yeah, of course that could be a threat to the indie sector. The indie sector was, Channel 4 was the midwife to the whole indie sector. But there's something very odd about the timing of this announcement because Channel 4 are currently looking for a new chair and a new chief executive, and they haven't got either of those people yet.
Yeah.
So it seems a very strange moment to nail your flag to that mast and say, this is what we're going to do. Because until those new people arrive, well, they might reverse it or they might extend it or whatever. So I think it surprised people. I did talk to somebody at Channel 4 at a very senior level about this, because there's talk of them increasing the quota from indies to 35%, which you think, I thought you got all your programs from indies.
It's
But what
decreased to 65%.
Well, no, what they said is, yes, but that's qualifying indies, which would include Hattrick, would include Expectation, but it wouldn't include anything owned by All Three Media. I
Right.
don't think, I'm going to need to get this right, or Fremantle, definitely not BBC Studios or ITV Studios, because the qualification means to be a qualifying indie, you cannot be associated at some other level with a broadcaster.
Right. Okay.
And actually, is that the case with All Three Media anymore since they were bought by Redbird? I don't even know. I feel I ought to know. So the quota thing is not quite what it appears, but the statement of intent and ambition is more, it sort of is a little bit, oh, really? That does look like it's a threat to the indie sector.
I also think there's a problem about the creative output, is that who are they going to attract in there and how can they incentivize them? I had this argument with Danny Cohen when they were setting up BBC Studios. I said, you can't reward people like I can reward people. The BBC would not allow you to reward people. I always say, we joke when you get a young producer saying, please become a millionaire. Please remove the ceiling, be as successful as you want here. BBC can't do that. And I don't think Channel 4 can. Otherwise, newspapers are saying, Channel 4 executive making over £1 million or whatever it is. They are constricted by the fact they are a corporation. They are a public service
Well, I think
entity.
Alex Mahon was on about 1.5.
No, but I'm talking about getting creative people in.
Oh, so
generate,
you're talking to
your
lead
IP.
this studio, yeah.
No, I'm talking about people who walk into your business. Like, for example, many years ago, we had a young man called David Young, who then went off to become the youngest controller of entertainment at BBC. He created The Weakest Link, which made the BBC 100 million in international sales. So someone like that, they're going to find it very hard to entice those people in. I think that it's all well and good saying we're going to produce more of our own content, but will it be any good? Or will it be as good as the content they're getting from outside?
But they're going to buy the indies outright, aren't they? That are now in the growth
certainly
fund.
talking about doing it.
Yeah,
they're certainly talking about doing it. But you could argue that if the first part of this conversation is right, that it's getting tougher and tougher to start an indie, it might be more possible to get the person that you would once have got. And if they start kind of doing a bit of a roll-up of indies with buying a stake in them with the option to increase it to 100% at a later date in a very typical way, they might do it by acquisition. I think this is one of the things you've seen in the world of super indies. There are two ways of growing a very large indie, and I used to run the UK arm of Fremantle. It's called Talkback Thames at that time.
Yeah.
There are two ways of doing it. One is organic growth, which is coming up with great ideas, and the other is acquisitions. One is much harder than the other. Yeah. Obviously.
Yeah.
So where you see this had been the case at Fremantle, they'd been on a bit of a shopping spree before they bought Talkback, my company, where they bought this under Greg Dyke, who was the head of Fremantle. I think it was called Pearson TV at the time, because they wanted to establish a presence in the market, and they didn't have the patience to try to do it on their own accord. So they just went on this sort of acquisition spree. Now, Channel 4 could go on an acquisition spree.
You don't have any money.
Well, I can say there are a couple of things that constrain that. One is that have they got enough money? And the other is, are there enough targets to buy? Because in a consolidated world of these super indies, are there enough properly independent producers who can make a difference to them?
I think there probably are, aren't there? I mean, there seem to be, like I said, going back to my earlier point, there's no shortage of indies, and there seems to be a slowing up of acquisitions by a lot of these media groups over the last 2-3 years. We haven't seen this,
honestly, that's cyclical, because I remember I sold Talkback in 2000, June 2000, so it's 25 years ago this month, actually. Yeah. And I can remember 6 months later, people much wiser than me who knew how television worked saying, you got your timing right, because everything's gone into decline since then. There'll never be another deal like that. Well, that was just hogwash. There were so many deals around the corner that were as big or bigger than that. But it seemed that way. When you're on the sort of downward path of the cyclical thing, you think, it's like the property market or whatever. You think, nobody will ever buy my flat. And then it goes into the upward path and you've got a queue of people outside the door. So I don't see it in such absolute terms that I think you're implying. I think I don't think this is a bit of a downward slope, but you could easily construct an argument to say things will come bouncing back, and the fittest will survive, and then the industry goes. You only need one large organization to say we want to buy into this. And then that triggers a whole new wave of M&A.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Redbird being an example. Obviously.
Yeah. And we're seeing a lot of money from the Middle East coming in now.
Redbird is money from the Middle East.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. No, believe me, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, or when Jimmy and I were doing deals for Hattrick and Talkback 25, the idea of Middle Eastern money might have turned up and bought a production company. Would have seemed absolutely extraordinary.
Yeah. There was a brief time when Russian money was starting to creep in, but that was curtailed quite quickly, wasn't it, a few years ago? So Alex Mahon has left, as we know.
Is that you pronounce it? Are you convinced that's how you pronounce it?
No, I'm not convinced. I hear everybody I speak to pronounces it in a different way. Either it's Mahon or Mahon, or how would you pronounce it? You would probably know because you're getting lots of shows.
No, well, you were calling her Mahon for a long time.
She used to work for me, but we were on Christian first name terms, so I don't know. I never said how do you pronounce it.
Well, you just call her Susan.
Anyway, let's not worry about her pronunciation. So she's left.
Who's going to replace her?
Or is she leaving?
She's about to leave.
She's about to leave. Yes.
Yeah.
How would you judge her? Two questions. How would you judge her tenure, and what skills does the person her replacement need, and who would be the ideal person to take that role?
I think she's done a pretty good job. I think she had a really difficult job. I think she navigated the channel through COVID and I would say the advertising downturn. I think that
the Tory government, the risk of privatisation,
and that was an awful period where literally ththese carpetbaggers were threatening to flog them off to their mates. And I remember once we were asked to put on a special event, a BAFTA for Derry Girls, to bring over some MPs, mainly Tory MPs and some Northern Irish MPs, to watch the final episode of Derry Girls. And afterwards we had this kind of drinks thing. We were told to be nice to the MPs to make sure that they could see how creative Channel 4 was. And the MP for Calder Valley, I forget his name now, is it like Toad from Toad Hall? He's an irritating little twat. And he came up and was very bumptious to Lisa, very patronising about Northern Ireland. He said, "Oh, it's very good what you're doing in Northern Ireland now. Belfast has really come good since the Good Friday Agreement. About time you started paying all that money we've been investing in you for the last 25 years. And we kind of laughed in that way. You laugh at someone's not being very funny, but you try and be polite.
Yeah.
And then he picked up on this and said, "Oh, I don't think that joke went down very well." He said to me, not to Lisa, and then said, "I better check my bag for bombs tonight." And I met Lisa last week and we were talking about it. And I said, it's one of those occasions where I just wish I'd thumped him in the mouth. But the truth is that she said, "You were more sensitive about it than I was. I'm quite used to that kind of comment." So, listen, I think that she's done, going back to Alex Mayon, I think she's done a pretty good job. But Peter will tell you more about it because he used to work with her.
Well, no, but that's a good while ago now. I mean, Channel 4's still there. Saw off privatisation, I think, probably twice during her time. Hasn't gone bankrupt. Still making interesting programmes. It's got big challenges, but I'd say that's a good legacy. To turn to the second part of it, what qualities are you looking for in somebody new? I think there's a kind of fundamental split when you're the people who need to appoint this person. Do you go for somebody who's got a long experience in television and therefore you feel, they know the game? Or do you try to spring a rabbit out of a hat by going for somebody in an adjacent industry who doesn't know anything about television at all but is brilliant? Could be either. My instinct's probably a bit more the former than the latter, because it's a hell of a risk if you appoint somebody somebody from abroad who's been in Silicon Valley or whatever, and it's got impressive sounding credentials, working for Meta or Google or something. That could work, but it's a bigger risk. Bigger risk.
Yeah, and it's a role with certain, maybe 1.5 hands tied behind your back, isn't it? In many ways, when it comes to public service broadcasting,
you need to understand,
as well as we're now talking about it being a commercially driven.
Well, it's always been. It's business. A quasi-commercial business. It's never needed. It's never had a share price or been judged on the profits that it makes.
Yeah.
But it needs to keep its head above water, and doesn't receive the politician who tried to privatise it a few years ago.
Nadine Dorries.
Was it Nadine Dorries? Was it her?
She was one of them. Yeah.
Didn't she say?
Didn't
she say something about public subsidy for Channel 4? And
yeah, she got it completely
wrong. There wasn't any public subsidy. There never has been any public subsidy for Channel 4, which is sort of kind of fairly breathtakingly ignorant thing to have said.
Yeah.
So Channel 4, there was one chief executive of Channel 4 who sort of campaigned to get a public subsidy, but that was never going to happen. It didn't succeed, and actually I think it was rather damaging to the channel because it managed to give the impression that it was on its knees.
Yeah,
and that's not the way to lead an organisation. I would say the next chief executive has a very challenging job to keep navigating Channel 4's place in a very competitive world.
Yeah,
but I don't think it ever looked like an easy job. It's always been a tough job for people.
No. But now more than ever, I think, when it comes to advertising has shifted to social, which is obviously why they're now making the moves to become a digital first broadcaster.
They are.
And actually a number of their key roles in their in 4.0 are also vacant at the moment. So there's at least 5 really senior roles at Channel 4.0 and the main channel, including the chairman and the CEO, that need to be filled. So there's quite a lot of change about to happen there. So it'll be really interesting to see how that develops.
We don't even know what the timescales on this are, because Dawn Airy is the interim chair, but it seems to be generally thought that she won't become the full-time or long-term chair. It's in the gift of Michael Grade, I believe, who's the head of Ofcom. They've got history together. So you've got to get a chair. You can't possibly appoint the chief executive before you appoint the chair. This could play out over the next 9 months, I would have thought, because you go, these are difficult things. Sometimes you've got to spring people out of jobs that they're already in. I mean, very often you have. That can take months and months and months. So I don't think we'll have clarity on this for quite a long time.
I think David Attenborough is a good pick.
I think you're a good pick, Jim. You're available.
I'm too young.
Come on.
Are you in the hat? Are we
you
putting
need a
you
new
in
job.
the book? No.
No, I don't have a hat.
So how about another industry organisation which is soon to have a new leader is PACT. John McVeigh.
Thank God. When you began with P, I thought you were going to say Pornhub.
John McVeigh seems to have been the head of PACT for a very long time.
Long time.
He's like
when he was
Gary
Lineker when he first arrived, he was young John McVeigh.
Yes.
Has there been another head of PACT since
Well, it wasn't
inception?
called PACT before.
It's called IPA.
And Denise.
And my partner who set up Hattrick with me, Denise O'Donoghue, who was brilliant, she was the very first chief executive, if you like, of the Independent Programme Producers Association.
Right.
So she helped Channel 4 to set up and helped to set up its relationships with independent producers and their agreements, so that when we set up Hattrick, she knew all the agreements backwards, which in the end was, to Channel 4's detriment, because she knew where all the bodies were buried.
Yeah, that was helpful.
So that was IPA, then that morphed into PACT. And PACT, as you know, its remit is to protect the interests of independent producers, which on occasion it does.
Are you guys members? Are you both members?
Oh yeah, you're bound to be members if you've got an independent company. Yeah. But I'm not I'm not a kind of person who goes to the PACT annual general meeting or whatever, and I feel
no,
I don't know, the very notion of being an independent producer, kind of slightly lone wolf, not wanting to sit within a system,
antisocial,
sits
basically
slightly at odds with the idea of a trade association like PACT. That doesn't mean PACT haven't done, and if you're going to ask us, has John McVeigh done a good job over the last 25 years? I wouldn't really be able to tell you, because I don't know enough about PACT. I mean, the independent sector is still there. We still are able to retain our rights. Those are things that PACT is presumably, very dear to PACT's heart. So it sounds like they've done a good job, but I don't know.
I kind of think they are. They're on the side of the angels. We get that. We do have somebody senior at Hattrick, our commercial director Paul Cohen, who has served in various offices on PACT, and so is able to bring the conscience of the business to PACT. But it's a bit like the United Nations, I think, if I'm honest. It's advisory. I think it's very difficult for it to be if a big media organization wants to do something, it's very hard for PACT to change its mind. And the PACT members can humph and garumph, but in the end, we need to make programs, and I think the commercial imperatives of our industry override those issues that you're talking about. For example, when COVID happened, I mean, PACT did set up an emergency fund, which a lot of us contributed to, which was great. So, in those senses, they can step in and be helpful in terms of pastoral care and things like that. I don't know how much they've affected the legislative or the commercial imperatives of the industry the last 25 years. But I think, he's done a good job.
Yeah.
I'm not going to sit here and complain about John McVeigh.
No. Okay. Good. We all like John. Okay. So next question, coming back to comedy. And we're talking about perhaps YouTube being a rich playground for comedy and lots of opportunity. We see lots of comedians running their own YouTube channels and taking the opportunity to launch their own businesses digitally. When we look at some of the shows that you guys have been involved with, Have I Got News for You, Outnumbered, Ali G Show, the state of comedy now, those shows surely wouldn't get made today. Is that fair to say or not?
Why not?
Well, I'm just wondering that, I think that, first of all, there's much less comedy being commissioned. I think that obviously the panel show seems to have gone out
as a genre. It's going through a lean time.
Yeah.
Panel shows have never been fashionable. Even when they were commissioning them, nobody ever thought they were very fashionable. But comedies, I don't know. Jimmy can speak for Hattrick. Expectation, we've had Alma's Not Normal this year, which is a multi-award winning, hugely original comedy. We've had The Change on Channel 4 with Bridget Chris. It's a brilliant comedy.
Oh, it's my wife's favourite programme.
I'm very, very glad.
Karen loves it.
You do realise it's about a woman who leaves her husband?
Yeah, I know.
Because he'd be completely unbearable.
That's why Karen likes it, I think. She's seeing it more as a how-to manual.
We've just announced 2026 of John Morton, which is a kind of follow-up, or the third in the trilogy of 2012, W1A, and now 2026. So, God, I feel like a long-playing record here saying, of course, comedy is challenged. It's increased each other. There isn't the same quantity of comedy that there once was on television. But at the same time, there's still brilliant stuff out there, and it finds its way through. And in the days when there was a very, very large quantity of it, not all that much of it was absolutely brilliant. A lot of it was sitcoms that aren't fondly remembered because they weren't that good.
Yeah.
So, you kindly enough mentioned things like The Day Today and Brass Eye and Ali G. There's in that era of the 90s, which did feel like a pretty good time for comedy.
Yeah.
There's plenty of other stuff you're not mentioning.
Yeah.
Because it was just sort of sort of humdrum stuff, if you like.
Yeah.
So I think we feel very passionately about comedy and will be very alert to any dangers that it's literally going to die out on British television. But again, I don't think it's quite as bad as that.
Yeah.
I have a feeling that as the drama world becomes more and more challenging in terms of the terrestrials funding it, and certainly unilaterally, it's virtually impossible for them to do that. But unless drama costs come down through, will AI make editing cheaper or pre-production cheaper or whatever, maybe. But the truth is that one way they could win is to start producing more comedies or shorter form. When you talk about comedy and comedy drama, is that The Bear is in the Emmys categories as a comedy. I would posit the case. It's not that funny sometimes, but it's compelling. It's very, very good storytelling. So are we in an era where the broadcasters might, when the streamers are zigging, they zag and they produce more half-hour content, which would suit me down to the ground? I think that half-hour shows, whenever one of my kids in their 20s now say, do you want to watch this on Netflix? I say, how long was it? Oh, it's half hour. I'm in. I like that kind of length of storytelling.
Also, Jim, we talked about this on our podcast. One of the great things about the streaming world is it can be 37 minutes or 42 minutes.
Why are we locked into this
I've floated this on our podcast.
Yeah.
If I were now running BBC One or ITV or one of the linear channels, I think one of them should take the brave step to start varying program lengths rather than forcing them all into half hour.
Yeah.
Ironically, they don't do it all every night of the week. It's not the case on Saturday.
No,
Programs start at very odd times, but sometimes on Sunday vary it up. Monday to Friday, everything has to start at 7 o'clock or 7:30 or 8 or 8:30. That rules out irregular length programs. Since we now know, BBC cliche of the moment, it's all about the iPlayer. On the iPlayer, it doesn't matter in the least what length they are.
Yeah.
So when will the BBC say a drama can last 48 minutes?
This is the classic thing about corporation being slow to catch on, even with itself, is you've got the iPlayer that is a fantastic thing, I think. It's a great thing to navigate. They've got it, they're getting it right. And as Peter said, it can be any length you like.
And they have all that data. Right?
And very few people watch things as it goes out now anyway. Very few people watch it in that kind of old-fashioned way where the controller would decide what the smorgasbord of programs you're watching is that and the BBC doesn't even sell advertising. So it doesn't need break. It's in a great spot to say, to hell with the half hour, 1 hour. Let's just commission programs at the length that they should be.
It's interesting what you say about drama. And we're seeing a real growth of vertical drama, short form vertical drama coming from Asia, starting to really
the 1 minute drama
percolate through almost in a telenovela style, really starting to percolate through in America now, and lots of also small UK indies starting to build that. I mean, do you think there's a future for short form vertical storytelling? Because again, we're talking about younger audiences who are not sitting in front of TV screens watching. We're talking about digital natives.
Yeah, we were pitched an idea a while ago by a very experienced writer. He said, "I see this as 10-minute sections," and I read them, and they were brilliant. They're very compelling, but I couldn't sell it because the old school thinking is, 10 minutes. I don't think we do 10 minutes. I had a project which was, I'd say, it's a comedy drama, very, very funny, but quite tragic in parts. Sent it to the BBC comedy department. They said it was a bit too dramatic for us. Sent it to the drama department, who came back 6 months later and said, we don't do half hours. Which seems to me like a crazy reason for turning anything down.
Yeah.
Because it's only in television you get this distinction between the two departments. You turn up in Hollywood with a film script. They don't say, are you going to go to the drama department or the comedy department? Because it's a continuum between there's very funny films, there's very dramatic films, and all points in between. Television decades ago decided that the drama people sat over in that corner, if you like, the comedy people sat over in that call, and within reason, never the twain shall meet. Yeah. And I think we now live in a different world. And again, just as it would be bold for a scheduler to say, yeah, bring me a 42-minute program, it would be bold for a broadcaster to eliminate the distinction between comedy and drama commissioning. Yeah. But I haven't seen it happen.
Well,
it's happened yet.
in Hattrick, you've got the scripted department and the non-scripted department. And the scripted department is on the lookout for any good stories, whether they're comedy, drama, or comedy drama. And the company we set up with Jed Mercurio, HTM, ironically, we're doing a half hour in America about an eccentric lawyer starring Henry Winkler, which is a comedy. Jed Mercurio's company is doing a comedy. Why? Because it's a really good story.
Yeah. And
it's very, very well written. So why wouldn't you do it? The idea that you have these rules which just seem to come from a different time. I think, to your point, the digital's changing all that.
Yeah.
And I think that the next generation of commissioners coming through, I think they'll get on the bus with it. I think, all these things change at different times. And as Peter said about, we discount a whole genre, and then suddenly some bright spark comes up with a brilliant iteration of it. Like, I remember going out for lunch with David Letterman the week he was about to launch Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. And he said, I'm going to schedule it every night of the week. I thought, you're a madman. Mind you, I'm the one who thought that Strictly was a terrible idea. So I know nothing about those things. But he said, no, this guy who's produced it, he's been to see me now for the last 7 years. He's been developing it with me for 7 years. He keeps noodling away at it. Now he's got it right. And I'm going to give it the big launch. I'm going to be bold about it. It was a family quiz show. And yet it also was a brilliant drama. Yeah. It was also a reality show. It was many, many things. And then for the next 2 years, every network across the world just wanted its own Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. It created a whole new...
But that's the point I was making earlier, that somewhere out there, somebody's going to create the next thing like that. And then...
We'll all want one.
Exactly.
Yeah. So last question before we go into our story of the week, hero of the week, and get in the bin section. If you were to launch, put yourselves in a position of you being, maybe being a young commissioner today, 30 years old, let's say.
Yeah.
You're now leaving to set up your own indie.
Mm-hmm.
What does that look like?
Well, it's a good question. I'm about to ask that question to a bunch of young people working at Hattrick. I think it's a really good question. What would they do? So I think there are clues for people of... I know you're implying that we're not young anymore, Justin, it's fine. Where are the next topics? How would you set up a media business now?
Yeah, because you've got an amazing track record and returning series and great catalogs. But if you to wipe that slate clean and just say, right, you're starting a new company now, how what would it look like? What would you make? How would you make it?
Peter, what would you do?
Well, I think it would depend what your skill set was. There's no point in saying, I want to do this thing, but there's no reason why anybody commissioning anything should have any confidence that I'm capable of doing it. But if you were a brilliant young maker of comedy or a brilliant young maker of anything, documentaries, dramas, live sport or whatever, then you've got a chance of that working. And And that's good as well, because it's good that new kind of talent and new faces are coming into television with forward-looking approach to you want to be challenging something. You want to be saying, we're going to do it differently to the people who've been doing it for a long time.
Yeah.
It may be that it is a bit more digitally led and less, geared towards the traditional commissioning system.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it's down to the individual, their abilities, talent, track record, and if they tickle those boxes, they will succeed.
Well, and also the only thing we can talk about is our own experience. Back in the day when we both were involved in these companies that were new. I mean, Peter's company was originally set up by two on-screen stars, Mel Smith and Griffiths Jones,
yeah.
who wanted to set up a company. And as we know, often talent-led companies crash and burn quite quickly because there isn't so then they get Peter, who then can start to build that company and build it beyond so you take what you've got,
That's
it's
really
it's the old Forrest Gump thing. If you get lemons, you make lemonade. And so he uses the platform of Mel and Griff, and then he builds it way beyond the last Smith and Jones into, the day-to-day, Brass Eye, at the Alan Partridge shows, Ali G, Big Train. It becomes.
Yeah, and we did drama and factual as well.
Yeah.
Could we kind of went multi-genre, but
which is also a clever thing to do. I think that's what we did. We did lots of different genres because I think just making half-hour comedies is high risk and it takes a long time and often they don't work. And so I think you need we did lots of entertainment shows in the 90s. We had David Young and Richard Osman working for us in development, and we were creating BBC One Saturday evening shows like Whatever You Want and Confessions, which lasted 5 or 6 years, which, they're like military operations, these shows. They're very difficult to get right. So I have major respect for those genres. And I learned a lot by playing in different areas. And I realized that a good producer like Dan Patterson can produce Whose Line Is It Anyway? He can produce a talk show with Clive Anderson and a sitcom with Jim Broadbent. I think the problem is often young people coming in get siloed and you go down that route and you never meet other genres. And I quite like the idea of being slightly generalists because a good producer is a good producer.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people get the opportunity to do that within the BBC or other public service broadcasters. That's another benefit that we haven't talked about. Is obviously the experience that you can gain through the big corporations. But
people get siloed in big corporations even more.
Yeah, okay.
So Talkback started out with comedy, and then I kind of led it into drama and factual because nobody would stop me. There's nobody to stop me at all. Just come up with the ideas or get the right person on board.
And some of the comedies ended up as drama, didn't they?
The ones that were very funny.
Quickly rebrand it.
Do you see what I mean? Whereas within a big organisations get very political. You mentioned at the beginning in the intro, you mentioned the One Show. So the One Show, in the relatively brief time I was at the BBC, the One Show is probably the one idea I had that became something that changed the BBC One schedule. Lots of people are against it, because it was treading on the toes of people who made certain program at 7 o'clock on a Tuesday. Right. That would have to make way for the One Show.
Right.
Big organisations get political. I think we are both, by our nature, indies, small organisation people, where it's about the talent, the programmes. You need to be quite fleet of foot. As I say, you need to be able to deal with the days when it all seems to be going wrong, when you get 3 rejections in a row or whatever, and believe, no, we will get a new commission and it will, it's as much that, it's as much a mindset and a personality type. I think, that doesn't mean you all have to be the same personality type, but that's why some people do succeed at independent producers and some struggle a little bit more, I would say.
I'm going to get one quick question in before we go to the next section, because I thought it was very interesting to see Mr. Bates versus Post Office win BAFTA, and that's won
a special BAFTA,
yeah, that's right, special BAFTA, and I think it's done an enormous power of good and really got the country behind it, and you could say changed government policy and had all sorts of effects. So that obviously shows a real benefit of public service broadcaster funded drama. And then obviously, we haven't talked about streamers. We haven't talked about Netflix so much, and some of the other streamers that have come and changed the whole landscape of drama in the UK. But one of the biggest stories of last year or so was Baby Reindeer, and the court case that's going on now around Baby Reindeer, where it was billed as a true story.
Yes.
And obviously, one of the key protagonists is saying that is not a true story. Do you think I'm juxtaposing those against each other because the amount of research and work that went into making sure that Mr. Bates versus Post Office could have the very highest standard that was passed by compliance of this is a true story, because you can't.
They didn't bill it as a true story, did they?
Yeah, they did.
I thought it was based on a true story.
Oh,
see, the word "based" opens it, and we've done lots of factual dramas.
This is the true story.
No, that's Baby Reindeer.
Yes, that's
Baby
what I mean.
Reindeer stuck out.
That's
what I'm saying.
This is a true
That's
story.
what I'm saying. Yeah.
No.
But
I think what Jimmy was saying is
Mr. Bates
is
is not
Office is based
on a
in
true
other
story.
words, they didn't make any grandiose claims.
See, this is a true story. I remember saying to my wife, we were watching it. I said to Karen, "That's very unusual." I stopped it. I went back. I went,
"Wow,
that is a claim." They've got problems because we've done those kind of stories before. We did the Stephen Lawrence story. We've done other factual stories. And they are a minefield because you're dealing with people who are still alive.
Yes.
And merely by writing a script about a real event is fictionalizing it. I think that if two people are having a conversation in real life and you point a camera at them, it changes the nature of that real conversation. It's being observed. So I think that was a mistake. And it was rather grandiose of whether it was the company or the creator.
Whose mistake was it? Because Netflix must have compliance people and lawyers. And things.
Because that's an open
I
goal.
think it's a bit of a mystery. It seems to me that for that to got onto air without somebody holding up a flag and saying, "Hang on, can we stand up everything in this?" is a surprise.
Yes.
There are a million different formulas. What is the word?
Formulae.
Formula.
Yeah.
There are a million different formulae along the lines of this was based on a true story. We made some bits up.
Yeah.
Yes.
That some of the characters may have been changed.
Changed for dramatic purposes.
There's a million of those.
Yeah.
So
and no one
did
cares.
that ever get to air saying plainly and boldly this is a true story?
Yeah.
They were asking for trouble.
I saw the stage play, which was very good, and Richard Gadd was excellent in it. And of course, it has more impact because it happened to him. So he's personally witnessing what happened to him. Now, the stage version dramatizes real events in a way which then says, well, maybe they didn't all happen in that sequence. Therefore, it doesn't happen that way. Similarly with the TV show is that it was so well told and so dramatic. The ending of the show calls back a moment where he's in the bar and there's a transaction where he's on the other side now. He's not a barman, but he has a similar transaction with the barman as he had with his supposed stalker.
Yeah.
That was written.
Yeah.
That wasn't lived. That was a very good piece of writing. And writing isn't real. It's a simulacrum of what is going on. And the better the writing, the more it will immerse you. Like Mr. Bates versus the Post Office, they didn't all say that in sequence. The stuff in the courtroom probably is some transcripts. You're on safe ground there. Yeah. But, a married couple running a postmasters thing in Yorkshire, we don't know what was actually said. Yeah. But a good writer will write what they think was said, and the research will tell you that's probably what was said. So I think by just saying, based on a true story, I think you're being more honest. Yes. Saying this is a true story, I think you're being rather grandiose, and you're setting yourself up for what they've now got, which is like $100 million lawsuit by
It's still ongoing.
Yeah. It's very interesting. It's a very good question, Justin, because it held me up when I stopped the recording and thought, hang on a minute, I've never seen that before. Yeah. I can't remember ever seeing this is a true story.
And my point, I suppose, is that, duty of care, does a company like Netflix have those same safeguards that PSBs do in the UK?
Well, I bet they do now.
And should they? Well, that's it. And should they be making that sort of
slightly different, but they're slightly different safeguards, aren't they? Because with the PSB, you have got the PSB remit, and Channel 4's got a very specific remit, but the BBC's been at it for decades and decades, and has got a public. They know what they need to be very careful about.
They've got the manual, right?
They
probably wrote the manual.
There's exactly what it was. I'm trying to think of the phrase. There's a sort of body of wisdom that's come down through.
Yeah.
So obviously Netflix is newer to the game, but it does, on the face of it, seem like a sort of very strange thing that got on air. It wouldn't have been difficult to have altered those words very slightly, and it wouldn't, in my opinion, even remotely altered your enjoyment of the show.
No.
Because you would have just thought, well, of course there's some things that
also, you wouldn't have noticed it.
You wouldn't have noticed
You
it.
notice it when they make a statement, which you think...
drawing attention to the boldness of it.
Yeah.
But you would have thought somebody at some senior level would have said, this could bite us in the ankle. And it seems to have done so.
I think it's impossible to tell a true story on television. I think that you can do a documentary. But even a documentary...
is full of decisions.
Yes. You can edit a documentary in a way that actually tilts it one way or the other. So I just think one has to be very careful where we're trying to sell the public on something that isn't actually true, rather than treating them like adults, saying, this is a really, really good drama. This did happen to this guy, and we're going to tell the story the best way we can. And you'll go along with that.
Yeah. Well, guys, thank you very much for that section. Now it's time for Story of the Week, where my guests get to highlight the industry stories that have caught their eye in the past 7 days. Peter, what's your Story of the Week?
Well, why don't you ask Jimmy first?
Right.
So
Jimmy?
I think the very good news...
I've been abroad, by the way. Sorry.
Peter's been on holiday to Mykonos.
Nice.
Yeah, he hasn't had much sleep. Anyway, I think that the good news the end of last week, which is kind of the story of this week really, is that the BBC decided to appoint Kate Phillips as its chief creative officer or content officer, whatever it's called, CCO, to succeed Charlotte Moore. And not only is she a continuity pick, which means that she has all her relationships in place. She's going to hit the ground. She's already actually standing in for Charlotte anyway. She's kind of acting as the CCO. So she knows what to do. But she's also an incredibly good executive. And I think that she knows how the BBC works, and she's sensible about how crazy the BBC can be sometimes. So you can have an honest conversation with her about how crazy they're being, and she'll go, I think we can sort this out. Okay. So I think that's the big story for our industry, is that who's going to run the BBC creatively, and it's Kate, and she will take it into the charter renewal negotiations alongside Tim Davies. So good luck to them both, really.
Okay. All right. Peter.
Well, I think what that speaks to is the fact that the wheel keeps turning. And so, somebody leaves, somebody comes in. We talked earlier about Alex Mahon, and now Charlotte, possibly Mahon. Charlotte Moore's gone, Kate Phillips coming in. And that happens on screen as well as off screen. And I read a piece about a great sports broadcaster called Steve Ryder. Do you remember
Steve Ryder?
And Steve Ryder, I think, is finally hanging up his microphone, whatever you hang up. And it resonated with me because...
Is he going into drag?
I'll be honest, when I was at ITV, we sort of brought things with Steve Ryder to an end then. And he had a bit of a go at me about it.
You fired him?
I don't want to put it that way.
Okay.
But he's now had a go at Gary Lineker, who took over his job on the BBC. And as I read this, I thought...
What did he say?
He said, I think people mainly agreed that it was about the golf, that Gary was the wrong person to present the golf. But he was also having Gary for his tweets and for everything. Oh. And I guess in a way this saddened me, which obviously doesn't make it sound like a good news story, that cycle goes on and it will always go on, that there would be people emerging onto television and then they'll have that great thing, the audience likes them, they'll be brilliant at what they do, as Steve was, and they'll have long careers. But there is also the other end of those careers, and they will, if you like, very often not quite see that that's simply the logic.
Yeah, they don't want to go willingly, right? We see that a lot in radio.
It's like a game of musical chairs in which they just don't want the music to stop when they're not sitting on a chair.
But like you say that, but
Is that
strange.
How musical chairs work?
But in the BBC, the joke was that the BBC musical chairs, when the music stops, they put an extra chair in.
Yes.
Yes. But what's Gary Lineker going to do, by the way? We've not discussed this yet.
Well, he's not going to be short of a penny or two because he's got a very successful successful podcast.
He runs the empire. Him and Tony Pasta.
He is in Star Wars terms the evil empire.
You're not going to get him not covering the World Cup next year. Yeah. So I mean, that's,
what I was going to say is wherever he pops up.
Interesting thing this, because I always say this: if you're somebody on the telly, there's a lot of pressure that comes with it, and so we've both worked with many of them. You know, the bloke who's on the telly feels a lot of pressure, but the bloke who used to be on the telly is worse. And you know, I can think of people. Not quite like Gary, but let's say Piers Morgan, who is huge on social media.
Well, he's huge anyway.
And he's huge on social media. He's got a huge following out there, but he's not really on telly anymore.
No.
And we've talked about...
But he's more popular than ever.
Well, this is a very interesting point, isn't it?
We've on talked YouTube.
Internationally, absolutely.
Yeah, and internationally, and he's got millions of followers on. I remember him explaining to me about 15 years ago, he was really early into social media, and he says, I want to have more followers on Twitter, it was what it was called then, than anybody else doing the same thing that I'm doing. He may largely have achieved that. But do you become, I'm circling back to Gary Lineker, do you become a slightly less visible figure in public life if you're not on telly as we understand it? I would argue you might be. You might.
Well, it depends, maybe regionally, maybe in one territory, but now, you know, Piers Morgan has the benefit of being big in America, of course, during his time over there. So he has actually got the US market, which is the biggest audiovisual market in the world, that he's appealing to as well as the UK.
Could he walk down Main Street in Wisconsin and would he be mobbed by people?
I think he might get a few things chucked at him, but I think he would be certainly recognised, and that could be what Gary Lineker's planning. I mean, why not? Why wouldn't he set up a YouTube channel, Goalhanger YouTube channel?
Quite possibly. But the thing about being on Match of the Day, for example, is you are literally in people's living rooms on a Saturday night, because sport is the one thing you want to watch live.
Yeah.
So there's an agreement that there'll be several million people will be watching it as it goes out. So there's a community already there. I think the way people watch now is what's the word we're using now? They're atomized. So people have their own individual journeys into their own media based on the algorithms that are being fed to them.
Yep.
So we're all living in our own. We may intersect, but these big, communal gatherings like, I'd say, Match of the Day and other things like Strictly, maybe that's where he'll pitch up. Maybe he'll go on. Maybe Gary will go on to Strictly. He can move around the floor. He can move around the floor. He's still got it.
Sports rights is another thing we should. We haven't got time now to talk about.
No, and I'm afraid we're not sticking to your format either.
No. Well,
we've drifted.
All right, so what's it?
Jimmy's got the
hero of the week. Who's the hero of the week?
Who's the hero of the week?
Noel Edmonds.
Same from me.
Noel Edmonds.
Really?
I tell you why. He is, we go back to the beginning of our conversation. He has got drive and resilience, and he never stops thinking.
He's a jack in the box. He just keeps coming out of the box.
And I actually worked with him on a show called Cheap, Cheap, Cheap on Channel 4, which was kind of groundbreaking, but silly.
Crap, wasn't it?
What?
Wasn't it crap? If we're being really honest here.
It was a bold move, and sometimes they work.
Yeah.
Sometimes they don't. But he was, I have to say, I enjoy working with him, and he was brilliant on the floor. It was as live, and he's got a producer's mind. So he was working on the floor, what was happening, and he was kind of controlling the events. He's gone to New Zealand because he said that he thought that Europe was going to be burnt up and blown up, and he's now in New Zealand, and he's popped up with this documentary, which has been unfairly.
He offered it to us. He didn't offer it to us, rather. He'd made his own pilot with his own resources, and then he offered it to a couple of production companies. I think he offered it to us because we make Clarkson's Farm, but he went with the other one, which is a guy called Michael Kelpie. And I remember, this is about a year ago now, obviously, because it's all been made in the meantime. I remember being slightly regretful that it hadn't come to us, because I thought, although it's slightly odd, people are watching.
And it has got an audience.
It's got an audience. It's got a kind of, he has an abiding brilliance as a television broadcaster, which is quite a separate thing from his beliefs in the world, because he's got some quite woo-woo ideas.
Well, he was trying to famously buy the BBC, I think, at one point, didn't he?
Well, Jimmy's tried to buy bits of the BBC.
I tried to buy BBC 3.
That doesn't make you a nutter.
No, I started off as a nutter.
And he
Anyway, I think he's a good
never
hero.
got prosecuted for murdering Clive Anderson, of course.
That's in Brassai.
Yes.
right.
He'd never done it before, was the line. That's our hero of the week.
Yeah.
Let's do the other
All right,
one.
Noel Edmonds. Hero
Maybe
of
he's
the
an
week.
anti-hero, but he's a hero.
Okay.
Yes.
And finally, who or what are you telling to get in the bin?
Well, like I said before, I was going to throw the whole notion of Channel 4 having its own production house in the bin.
Right.
I think it goes against the spirit of Channel 4. I don't think it's going to work for them that well. It's a nightmare running a production company. They should just concentrate on commissioning.
All right.
Yes,
How about
I
you,
agree with
Peter?
Jimmy again.
Yeah.
I agree.
Channel
We're
4's
one-
in-house production
we've
business is gone in the bin.
Good.
Okay. All right, Peter, Jimmy, thank you so much
Pleasure,
for joining
Justin.
me on TellyCast this
Nice to
week.
see
Good
you.
luck with the Insiders, the
Thank you.
podcast, and
It's
all
It's
the
not
best.
got a the. You're adding a definitive.
Oh, am I? Okay. Just
Insiders.
Insiders. Okay.
Insiders.
Just Insiders. You can find
Yeah.
that, I'm sure, on
Definitely.
all podcast platforms. Thank you, guys. All the best. Good
Thank
luck.
you.
All right, thanks.